FSD version 12, and what does it mean? I figured I would grab somebody who knows a thing or two about AI. It is a Dr. Know-It-All, Dr. John himself, a real doctor, not medical, it turns out. He still won't look at my rash.
I'm not the useful kind of doctor.
But seriously, will you look at my rash?
Sure. Drop trowel, man. Let me see it.
So, we got some news about V12. We got to see a demo, warts and all.
Very few warts.
Very few warts.
Surprisingly.
Apparently it took 4 months to train.
That is a rumor. Yeah, okay.
Apparently it takes 1 million clips to be competent.
For a given situation.
For for each case, I guess.
And if you don't know about stop signs, trying to find 1 million clips of people actually stopping at stop signs was a very significant challenge, apparently.
So I'll ask you that because it rolled through a stop sign. Why would it do that? Doesn't it know the rules?
Yeah, that's because, according to Ashok, who was in the car with Elon when they did the drive, 0.5% of the population actually stops at stop signs. Not 5%, 0.5%. So it's yeah. Well, I mean, come on. And actually what they said is people actually think they're stopping at stop signs. So even if you think you're stopping, the likelihood is that you're just kind of, 1 mile an hour rolling through the stop sign. You're not actually stopping.
So it doesn't know what rules are.
No.
And all it knows is drive the way other people have driven.
Right.
Which is why it did not train on my mother's driving.
So actually, we could start with this.
Yeah.
My theory, they did not say this, so this is my speculation, is that that the driving score that they use for insurance, Tesla insurance, and back in the day when I wanted to get the FSD beta and they had that test, you had to drive for like a month and be a good boy.
Safety score.
Safety score. That safety score, I have a feeling, was actually originally designed to find out who the statistically good drivers were so that they could pull their data. A good way to curate. Think about that.
Oh.
Yeah, right? So
that would
very clever.
absolutely do the
trick.
And
so that they probably did that, and then some smart person was like, this would be really, really good for insurance because now we already know who the good drivers are and we can charge rates on that. So I actually think the insurance came out of the fact that they wanted to collect data and they wanted to curate it and make sure that they only got good drivers. Because you certainly don't want, if you got the bell curve of drivers, you don't want this half of the bell curve. No. You want to make sure that you're not getting the people who are looking at their phones, weaving across lanes, all of that kind of stuff. You don't want to emulate that. You want to emulate the really, really good drivers. So,
well, I'm a very good driver, John. I don't know if I've told you this, but I am right at the top of the bell curve.
There you go.
At the highest
part. I am so average on average.
I'll have you know I scored a 98 on IQ.
There we go.
Brian, no.
Brian, no. Look how well I did.
The gentleman's A minus. No, honey,
That's
no.
not the way
I'm
that
so
works.
Sorry. So what Elon was saying that the lines of code is likely to be reduced by 1 or 2 orders of magnitude. Is that possible? Is that real? Is that
yes?
How?
Okay.
What does the code look like at that point?
So okay, let's imagine. So this is software 1.0 versus software 2.0 that Andre Karpathy has talked about for years. You've got, if you want to do a simple case of stop signs and you want to tell the computer every single possible case of a stop sign, just assume that we can see the stop sign already. We don't, because that's hard. Just like, what is a stop sign? That's difficult. But assuming we already know that, it's like, okay, so I see a stop sign, now what? It's like, okay, when you get within this distance, make sure you stop unless, and then start and go again, unless somebody's on the other side, and then you have to decide, did they get there first or did they get there second? Do you let them through? Do you go? Also, if this thing is halfway covered, is that a stop sign still or not? If there's a dude holding a stop sign, like construction workers, and he's holding it down, is that a stop? I don't know. Is this a stop? I don't know. You have to write every single possible case, and there are so many cases. And so you have thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of lines just for the simple case of a stop sign. And then you multiply that by stoplights, bicycles, pedestrians, other cars, lanes, and it just goes bleh. So 300,000 lines of code is actually really small, and that already indicates that they have a huge amount of it in neural networks. And then they can still reduce that from 300,000 down to 3,000 by going full neural network. So what a neural network does instead is it's a relatively small amount of code, and it puts all of the sort of heuristics, the things that humans would know, into the data. So you have 3,000 lines of code, but you have these massive multi-gigabyte data sets of just giant matrices, giant Excel spreadsheets, huge, going to infinity. And you have these huge Excel spreadsheets, and all the little numbers in those spreadsheets are what's getting tweaked as it's learning. And so you don't have to change the 3,000 lines. It's like if you see there's a mistake, if you do it in traditional code, you have to go back and a human has to go, no, what I really meant was this, and here's another exception, right? So it just becomes more and more bloatware. With a neural network, it's like the architecture stays the same, the neural network stays the same, it's the data that changes. And the data gets updated, and the data gets updated.
So that means that one code would
Yes.
work in every country.
Yes.
As long as it's trained on that country.
Right.
It's the same code, but fed with different data.
Right.
So what I hear you saying is we could have a law that says don't steal bicycles or cars or stereos or rings or necklaces or
Right.
food, or you could have one that just says don't steal.
Yes, but the problem is don't steal is really complicated for a computer to understand.
Right, but that's what I
yes,
mean is,
right.
and then with the neural net, you've scrunched it down to, because if
Right.
the reason the law gets so bloated is because lawyers and judges have disagreements.
Yeah.
But in FSD, it is the lawyer and the judge.
Yes.
As long as it knows what it means, it doesn't have to.
And it's
play
what
the
is
semantic game.
Elon's thing is always vox populi. It's like the voice of the public. And so basically, we are, every time any of us is driving, even a Tesla, even if it's not got full self-driving on, we are taking the opportunity to give our voice and say like, yes, this is how you should drive.
So what that means is, if you have a big Tesla parade on the 4th of July, on the 5th of July, your car's going to want to go 5 miles an hour and run the stop signs.
Exactly.
I mean,
as long as it's
in
following
theory.
a bunch of floats.
As long as
It's like, are there floats in front of me? Well, then go 5 miles an hour and ignore the stop signs.
So it really is possible to have a code that small and
Yes.
actually work.
Yes.
Huh. Do you think that this is the hardware that's going to get it done?
Hardware 3. Or
4?
Yes. Well, the reason why I was very much of the opinion that it was not going to happen with hardware 3 until they were doing the test drive, and
On
they were
3.
talking on 3, and Elon said that the compute is so fast that it's limited by the frame rate of the cameras. They only will operate at 36 frames per second. The ones that are on the on the car, they only operate at 36 frames per second. They think that the computer could actually, the code could actually operate at about 50 times per second as opposed to 36 times per second. But still, 36 times per second is way more than adequate. That's
Also,
like
to point
plenty.
out, the power drain is how many watts?
100.
And your hair dryer is how many watts?
1500.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Just the graphics card on my computer
Yeah.
is way over 100 watts.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but in my office once, it was the winter and I had the heat on and I was exporting a file.
Oh, yeah,
And I'm like,
yeah.
oh, I
Uh-oh.
should probably turn something off.
At least you had the brown flickery thing.
I
Sometimes
did,
the
I
circuit
did.
breaker just goes, choop, and it's like,
Yeah.
oh, you're done.
My new office has a little more juice than the old one. I only had one circuit on the old one. But
Yeah.
Anyway, the 100 watts is very, very
Yeah.
efficient.
Everybody has LED light bulbs now, but it's the old light bulbs that,
Right,
just the
100
tungsten
watt,
light bulb that you would screw
one bulb
into.
was,
Yeah.
and those halogen floor lamps were 500
Yeah.
each head.
Yeah.
So then, I guess the next question is, this is an impossible one. It's more speculation here. Does the compute draw the same juice, whether it's in shadow mode, FSD
Oh.
engaged, FSD disengaged? Is it always drawing 100?
I believe that what would they call that then? I can't remember the word right now.
Phantom.
Pardon?
Or
No,
ghost-
not phantom. But no,
ghost.
I'm saying that's the nominal baseline
Oh,
mode as it's running full self-driving. If it's running in shadow mode, it very well might be pulling that kind of power also. But if everything's off on full self-driving, it's going to drop way, way below that.
Does it?
Yeah. But I think generally speaking, it's probably doing stuff in the background all the time anyway.
Sure,
So-
idling a little bit, but
Yeah.
not at full throttle. So you're saying if I really want a hypermile, don't use FSD.
Yes.
But the difference is
100 watts with a 73,
Over 3-4
80
hours.
kilowatt hour battery pack is
It's
like,
not.
Yeah. So actually, Josh 24/7. I don't know if you know him.
I do not. Hello, Josh.
I had hey Josh, I had dinner with him last night and Sandy and actually we ended up spending a long time talking. But he is going to hypermile this thing from Newfoundland. He's going to the east coast of Canada, and he's driving this stretch that literally doesn't even have a city in it for, I think it was 520 kilometers or something. It's the exact max range of the Model S. So he's going to try to drive it at about 45 or 50 miles an hour and see if he can make it. And I'm like, if you don't, there's probably not going to be cell phone coverage. And he's like, I'll make it. But anyway, yeah. So I told him,
he'll just wait for the next car to come by in March.
Yeah, exactly. It's like after the winter snows have left. Yeah. So anyway, he says if he does it, he'll be the first person who's ever done it, as far as he knows. So
not terrifying at all.
No.
And yeah, and guys, we're at the Fully Charged event in Vancouver, BC. You've got to come to these. You meet people like John. You meet people like me.
Like you.
But you also meet people like Sandy. How many times have you hung out with Sandy in the last 12 months?
Several, like
three,
at least
4?
Three. Yeah, 3 or 4. Yeah.
Because he comes to these events, and you got to check us out. You got to follow us, not just online, but in person.
Yeah.
And very closely. Just like this close.
Not creepy at all.
So there's a million questions about AI that I have, about FSD that I have, but I don't know what they are yet because you haven't told me. So I need you to let me know in the comments, what do we miss? What do we misunderstand? What should we get John back on the channel to talk about?
Go.
Because I'm capable of tracking him down in person, as you can see. And
not creepy at all.
Not creepy at all. At all. It's with love, John.
That's right.
It's with love.
You will never leave.
A little too much love. I'm sorry. So yeah, let us know in the comments so we can ask better questions. And get
definitely, I have 3 or 4 or 5 videos on Full Self-Driving version 12 in the last couple of weeks, so you can check out those too. Get some answers.
I'm going to guess that thumbnails of those have just appeared on screen for you to see.
There you go.
So let us know what we missed, what we misunderstood. Everybody else, like, subscribe. Big thanks to my patrons, without whom I could not do these things. Thank you guys so much for your decision to make this actually happen. And stay tuned, stay juicy. And I can't wait to hear from you, clever robots, perhaps in person.
There you go.